Hi, this is Chimes Media and I am James Williams. As many as 656 patients at Gosport War Memorial Hospital in Hampshire are believed to have died from the inappropriate dosing of opiates whilst under the care of Dr Jane Barton in the 1980s and 1990s. At a family forum event held on the 16th of October 2018 at Fernham Hall, Fareham, relatives and loved ones of the victims were addressed by key individuals involved in further investigation of the evidence. This is a full and unedited recording of what was said at the forum. It is in two parts. In the first part are the speeches of the panellists, and in the second part the challenging questions and statements made by relatives of those who were killed. There is a journalistic account along with the sound recordings that can be found on the website chimes.media.
What would be good now as we take questions is if you could identify yourself so that we've got proper note-taking. Identify yourself and if you wish to name the loved one in whose name you're here today. You don't have to do that, but if you wish to, then we would very much respect your desire to do so. So who would like to put the first question, please, and to whom would you like that question put?
In relation to what people have got to show.
Yes, please. Is that Tony? Tony. Give us your full name, Tony, and a microphone is now coming to you.
It is. Cool. I can do this.
Do we have the mic holders, please, in the room? Who are the mic holders in the room? Judy? Christine, could you be a mic holder, please, and take it to... Tony, please.
Well, morning or afternoon, I'm not quite sure. I'd like to thank the panel for a start, because I haven't personally managed to write to the Bishop and his team. But my name is Anthony Rain Carey. I am the eldest surviving son of Margaret Jane Carey, and I represent 3 surviving siblings of the family. And they have put to me the following questions. One to Chief Constable Pinkney. We inwardly digested 57 reports that accompanied the file on my mother, and it was rather sympathetic more to the staff of the hospital than the patient. For example, she started off in QA hospital. She also contracted MRSA and was, over the period of her stay of 3 months at Gosport War Memorial, she was, let's say, listed by not only the patients within the ward, but the staff there, that she was contaminating other patients, etc., etc. I don't want to go into too much detail, but that starts. Her stay there was, one taking into consideration the fact that she was an 84-year-old woman that went into hospital. She didn't have MRSA when she went in, she contracted it. The other part was I inwardly digested the Bishop's report, and it adequately summarises with the conclusions of the report, which I'll have. Which I have here. It's 4 pages. The conclusions are very precise and adequate. They cover the 27 years from 1991, when the member of staff first advised or tried to advise the administration of the hospital, what was going on. It was completely ignored by all concerned in the NHS. It was completely not taken into consideration from 1991. Statistically analysing the event from 1991 to the current situation, you virtually worked out that everybody within the NHS and also subsequent administration of the health service didn't do what they should have done and taken into consideration their findings. So I'd like to thank the Bishop again. The Chief Constable or Assistant Constable Chief, sorry, the position there seems to be that we've been going now since 2002, since Rochester. We've had a trial in 2003, we've had a trial in 2009, we've had the Baker report, we've had everybody else's report. Now, does he envisage an ending of this lot? What year? I am 80 years old, my sister is 82, and my younger brother's 78. Now, will we see the end of it in the next few years, 10 years, or what?
Tony, thank you very much. The question, sorry about this microphone. Can we make sure we get a proper microphone so that the next question can be heard without all that interference? But the question to you, Nick, is looking ahead, given how much time has been spent thus far in investigating, what do you see as a realistic prospect in terms of the timetable in the future?
Thank you, and I think that's a really relevant question. As I've said, the assessment, we're estimating to take a minimum 6 months. All the material should be there, and this is the piece we need to understand, and that's why I talk about the 4 options. If we go into different stages, that could take time, and I'm not going to stand here and say it will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't do that. If I knew, I would tell you, but I still don't know what that next stage is going to be. I am cognizant of the challenges there and the age range within the room, and the fact that you've been fighting for this for an awful long time. It isn't my role to hang around. We want to get on, and we want to do the right job, a thorough job in how we assess, and then we can outline what that next stage will be. But it isn't lost on me in any shape or form.
Thank you. Charles, please, and then Peter, and then we'll come over there, please. So microphones to the front for 2 questions, and if there's a second microphone, if that can go over to that side of the hall, please. Charles, and then Peter.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Charles Fielding, representing Brian Cunningham, my stepfather, and my mother, who died 10 years before that, in the same way. I just want to ask, may I say Mr. Downey, I can't remember the titles.
That's fine.
Are you going to be working with the CPS in parallel or not?
Yes. So we've already met with CPS. That was one of the first meetings that we've had, because we need to understand what they've already looked at, and it is a new lawyer, and what we will need to do to show something fundamentally different. So that was one of the first meetings.
Right, that's important to me. Quite frankly, I can't really understand your involvement at all. There should be, in my view, a direct link between the panel members, which include a senior police officer and the QC, and the CPS. And they should be directly, in my view, looking at the information that's been supplied. Okay, you're involved. I trust that we'll be working on that basis with you involved as well.
We will be...
And not separately, have to start again when the CPS gets involved.
So we will be working closely with the CPS. If we feel, following the assessment, that there's a case to answer for a prosecution, then we would then work with CPS to present that case. If, though, I've outlined 4 options, we don't think, then I wouldn't put that to the CPS if on our assessment.
know, but this is so early, I don't know what the outcome will be. But we've got the engagement, we've got a memorandum of understanding, we're having regular meetings with the CPS as we go through.
Thank you. We'll be watching very closely.
I know.
I have other questions. We should like to continue.
Charles, because a lot of people want to ask, I'll come back to you for a second go when we've heard everybody else. Thank you very much. Peter, please.
Thank you. Peter Birmingham, can you hear me?
Peter Birmingham, granddaughter, one of the granddaughters of Gladys Richards, and daughter and niece of the so-called troublemakers who went to Hampshire Police in 1998. It's a question for Nick, if I may. You've talked about advising families first and keeping that at the centre of this review. So my question to you is, when you decide at the end of this review which of those 4 outcomes is appropriate, will you commit to advising the families first of that decision before anybody else is advised of that?
So the process will be, yes, we're going to engage with yourselves, and I will share any decision and listen to you and your feedback around what that decision will be. I will be meeting other people as well, the different stakeholders such as CPS and HSE as we go along. So the timing of that is going to be really, really important, but absolutely. I'm going to stand here, whatever the outcome be out of those 1 to 4, I will stand here and I will share that with you. It won't be shared in a public domain or anything of that nature until I've spoken with you.
Thank you. Now over to this side of the hall, please.
Good morning, thank you.
But before you start, can I just ask where the next question will come from? Is somebody else like to ask a question? Then yes, in the middle. So if the second microphone can come to the middle there. Please, sir.
Thank you. My name's Alan Germain. I'm here today, excuse me, with my sister, Mrs. Gwendolyn Brewer, on behalf of my mother, who died in Mrs. Lily Hannah Germain. She died in Gosport War Memorial, November 1988. 98, sorry. At the time, although we were very concerned that she died rather suddenly, we decided as a family that, and at the time the numbers were small in question, that we would let matters lie on the basis that we rather naively thought, well, we can't get her back. That always troubled me, and I wish I'd been more proactive. And I'm one of the latecomers to the situation as a result of this because of the growing concern and the numbers involved. And as a result, I thought I'd better be a bit more proactive than I had previously. And I sought for my mother's medical records, excuse me, under the Act. And in fairness to the records department, they made extensive box sections, searches and over a few months, and came back to me fairly recently and said there was no records, as William has inferred, and I suspect I'm one of the 75, 100 that were further investigated, that the only record remaining for my mother was excuse me, her death certificate, which is held by the panel. So and in a way I was hoping there would be something more today, because we were looking for a bit of closure other than just the death certificate. However, I suspect I'm not alone, and there must be others who similarly came late and probably records have long since disappeared. So my question therefore is, how will this missing evidence on the inquiry, and as such on the conclusion of the inquiry, how will this impact, particularly for people whose records have long since disappeared?
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm going to ask both William and Nick to respond to that. First of all, William, if you want to say anything about the missing records of the others who are here, and then Nick specifically on what he proposes to do in answer to the question.
I don't have anything to add on the missing records other than to say the signposting process, which I outlined earlier on, it sounds like it's something that ought to apply to you and that you haven't been through that process yet to determine where your evidence base may sit.
Okay, Nick?
So we are aware of suggestions of missing records. That will be part of the assessment process to understand where they are. If I think there's a mention of a box missing as well of records, and we need to look at that as part of the assessment process. We only can address and assess the information that's available to us, but then we'll look at wider on what happened to those things.
We'll take the next question here, and question following from this side of the hall, please. Anybody? Yes, please. If we can get the microphone, Christine, who's got the microphone, please, to bring it over here so we can follow on. Just at the second table from the front. Please, can we have your question?
Thank you. My name's Diane Burke-Coulter. I'm here with my sister, Sandra Knight. Our mother, Joan McKenna, she died at Gosport Hospital in September 1993. We've come late into the investigation since the report has been published, so I think we must be one of the 100 that have been investigated. My question to William, you said investigations had started and some people have been contacted. We haven't had any contact yet. And so is that good or bad, or when are we likely to hear?
Well, we need to follow up on your case and make sure you have the requisite checks done. So we'll speak to you afterwards.
Thank you.
It is important to say that over lunch, William and his colleagues from the Department of Health will be available. So if there's any further information to be given to the department, then please do use that opportunity over lunch. We're going to go to the second table here, but another question following that, please, on this side. Yes, please. Can we get the microphone, Judy, to the third table there? Yes, sir, please.
Good morning. My question is to the officer from Sussex.
Can you give us your name?
It's Martin Chillers. I'm talking about my father, Sidney Chillers, who died at Gosport War Memorial. 2 days before he died, he was walking around the wall as a happy chappie. Due to come home, he was making arrangements to come home, and unfortunately he didn't, because he passed away rather suddenly. The important thing is that reading the report, there was no clinical governance or clinical accountability applied, or even duty of care applied by the staff at the War Memorial Hospital, and therefore what we want to see as families, I think, is the Crown Prosecution and the police force putting forward a case to the Crown Prosecution, so the Crown Prosecution can then start to impose legal criminal proceedings against those responsible, whether it be the doctors involved or even the nurses involved in administering the drugs that the patients did not need. My father didn't go there with a life-limiting illness. He didn't need palliative care, but that's what he received. He just went there purely for rehab, and 2 days before he died, we were planning as a family for him to come home. And therefore, we want to see the police force putting together a case for the Crown Prosecution for them to take it further and impose legal proceedings.
That's not a question, but it does require a comment from you, Nick.
I absolutely understand what you want, and I don't underestimate what we have to do to get to that position. I can only look at, from assessment, the material that's available, and if we then need to do any further investigation, I outlined the offences that we will be looking at, which is the murder, corporate manslaughter, misconduct in a public office. I have to look at the legal framework against the material and evidence available. So I'm not going to sit here and promise you that will be the outcome. But I absolutely understand what you want.
Just pressing Martin and Charles's comments about the CPS. There is widespread concern amongst the families about the role of the CPS. Yeah. And what assurance can you give the families that, having been failed by the CPS in the past, they won't be failed by the CPS now?
So the closely with the CPS, as I've said. We've already met with the CPS.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll stand up away from there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I absolutely understand that the point of CPS, I'm not here standing representing the Crown Prosecution Service in any shape or form. We met with the Crown Prosecution Service. We asked the question, what do we need to do? Because it does answer your question. I know what you want. I think I know what you want. And if it's something different, let me know. And I then have to look at the material, the evidence, to see if that will meet the threshold for a prosecution in one of those ranges of offences. If we get to the position where we're submitting papers and a file to the CPS, then that will be for the CPS to justify any decision whether that's to prosecute or not to prosecute. That is what we need to do. If I don't get to that position, I will stand here and tell you, because that's my role. That will be my judgment and my decision around, actually, there is nothing that we could, that is new or fundamentally different. And I caveat again, I don't know, because we've just started this assessment and there's a wealth of material that's there. At some point, it might be that CPS need to be here and actually explain their positions, and there are rights to appeal against any decision made by the CPS. We're not there yet. You know, this is why we've got to do the assessment piece, and then we can go through that and we can talk about that in 3 months or in 6 months or however long in the future when we get to that point.
Okay, Nick, I'm going to bring the Chief Constable in because she has got something to add to that particular point.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Constable Dan has talked about the future work with the CPS, but in my remarks to you, one of the things I said was there are so many agencies who must and are reflecting, I'm sure, on their part in this, and they must answer for themselves. And the CPS are independent of the police by design. That keeps, there's lots of legal reasons for that. It's also part of the society that we're in. So it, looking back, the CPS must account for themselves, but Assistant Chief Constable Downing has explained how the future lies, and I think it's important to separate those two.
Before I bring in the next question, if I could add that your suggestion, Nick, that the CPS be brought to a family forum is one that I would welcome, because I think that direct engagement would enable the CPS to sense the strength of feeling that there is amongst the families, and also the strength of the evidence that the families bring to it. So thank you for including that. Now we're going to at the table down there, and the next question following, if we can get the microphone, right at the corner at the end, please. Please.
Maggie Cheetham, representing Ethel Edith Thurston. Ethel was a simple lady who had some learning difficulties through her life. She went to Gosport War Memorial Hospital for rehabilitation and mobilisation following a hip replacement, partial hip replacement. I gather from the report that she was a very vulnerable lady who was basically, her basic nursing care was neglected. They said at the end on the death certificate she was suffering from senile dementia. She died from bronchopneumonia. I said at the time, I was told that she had I said she no more had bronchopneumonia than I did. She did not have senile dementia. She was a simple lady who had had some learning difficulties. She had held down a job as a younger woman for 35 years working at a bank in the city, behind the scenes doing a routine job. That lady did not deserve to die as she did from an overdose of diamorphine, midazolam and fentanyl patches. I would like reassurance from the Department of Health, William Vinal, please, that people like this are not ignored, and she should have had tender loving care at that hospital. All she needed was a bit of kindness and a bit of help. And if the staff had taken the trouble to speak to me about her mental state, I would have explained that if ever she got cross, she was a great friend of my mother's. She wasn't actually a relative of mine, but she'd been Auntie Ethel to me for 20 years or more. And if they'd taken the trouble to talk to me, I would have told them that when she was confronted by Dr. Beasley on one occasion, and he approached her to discuss her condition, she turned her head, as she did if ever she was a bit stroppy with my mother. And my mother and Ethel used to share meals and outings and things, but if Ethel got a bit naughty and stroppy with my mum, she'd say, "All right, Ethel, off to your own flat." And she behaved like a 10, 11-year-old child. In that situation, she was out of her comfort home. She was frightened. She had no friends there. Unfortunately, at the time of the accident, I was in hospital. I moved house that weekend. I saw her one day when I tried to persuade her to eat or drink something. She wasn't interested. She was sitting up in bed in the sun, and she was joking as usual. 2 days later, she was laid out with a white sheet up to her chin, and she died in my arms whilst I was with her. That should never happen, and I hope, William, that will never happen again to someone as vulnerable as Auntie Ethel.
Well, obviously, I don't think she or anyone else should have been ignored. The particular questions of people who have some kind of capacity issues are better managed now than they were in the past, but I think it's something that we probably need to take account of when we do our response. Obviously, we commissioned the Gosport panel to bring these things to light, and that's why the police are now assessing the evidence presented.
And I'd like to take this opportunity from what you've said, Maggie, to register that, because you've sought assurance from the department, that since the publication of the report, I have been contacted privately and personally by a significant number of people who have similar concerns to the Gosport families. And so you're absolutely right to press the question that this should not be happening elsewhere to anybody. Thank you for registering it. Now over, please, in the corner, and then we're going to come to the lady who had her hand up here. Is a hand? Oh, yes, sorry. We'll come to you next. So microphone at the front, please. And please give us your name.
My name is Michelle Phillipson, and my mother was Mary Benson. Unusually, I'm youngest of 9. My mum...
Can you put your near your mouth, please? Right here.
Can you put the microphone near your mouth?
Here?
That's best. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's Michelle Phillipson. My mother was Mary Benson. Okay?
Thank you.
Right.
Carry on.
Well, I'll gloss over it because it's upsetting. My question is for the police, really. The documents that were handed over and that you are reviewing, do they include, it's sort of a two-question, the documents from Hampshire Police? Are they part of this 100 and whatever it is, 1,000 documents that you are reviewing? If that is so, do we get back the evidence that we've handed over, that we handed over in 2003? I ask because our father's diaries were taken that he kept while my mum was in the hospital, because unusually my mum was in there for 18 months.
And was there a second part to your question?
No, it's really just about these documents.
Just about those
did
documents.
it include those from Hampshire Police in this huge pool of documents?
Okay.
And then will we, at the end, finally get them back? We have asked in the past, but we don't get them.
So absolutely everything that Hampshire Constabulary has been handed over to the independent panel, now the former panel. So we have nothing that they haven't got. In terms of the detail of the specific around the diary, I personally don't know, we can look, but in terms of, I should imagine, because, as others have said, so many different investigations, that has remained current all the way through. But when this eventually comes to an end, Assistant Constable Downing.
So, yes, all the materials there, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not aware of all the different material, so I couldn't comment on diaries. But what we will do, I'll link into Christine and the transition team just to see if we can pinpoint them now. At the end of any investigation, if it moves into an investigation, then we would seek to return material.
Okay.
But I think there's an early question for me is, are they there?
I've still got the receipt.
Brilliant. You know, because actually there's a piece and we can assess the relevance of that and get them back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michelle. Christine Gifford, who's been referred to, is here, so you could register your point personally with her over lunch as well. Please. And then the question next, right at the back, please. And you've got the microphone, so, Madam.
Thank you. My name is Angela Robinson, and my father was George Lawton, Lawton. What guarantee will we have when all this is over that it's not a wider problem and that it isn't happening in other parts of the country? I can't see that we in our little part of Hampshire are so different from much else that might be happening.
This very much echoes what Maggie was putting forward. William, can you answer that directly?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, and I don't think I would ever be able to give an absolute guarantee that these things don't happen elsewhere. That's the first thing to say. However, there are quite a lot of things, and I don't want to go into the detail now, but there are quite a lot of things that have been put in place in the intervening years that would make these things harder to happen and would pick things up earlier. I think there is also more that we can do, and when we set out the government response, we will go into that in some more detail. The one thing I would probably like to highlight now, because we already know it's going to happen, is there is a system of medical examiners which was first recommended from the Shipman inquiry, which you may remember was a not dissimilar case from 15 years ago, and a doctor who did some pretty awful things to many patients. And the recommendation from that was that there should be a system whereby if there is a suspicious or unexplained death, it is possible for a medical examiner to review it. At the moment, basically a number of deaths go to the coroner and other deaths get put to one side, more or less, and the medical examiner views will allow a more regular review of those deaths that are harder to explain, and that is due to be introduced from next year. So that is but one part of some of the things that have changed in recent years, but it is one of the newer things.
Before I take the next question, let me ask you again about the government's response. How will that come? How will it be communicated to the families?
Well, the government response is due to be published fairly soon, and we are hoping to get something out certainly before Christmas, and that will outline some of the things I've mentioned, and we'll look forward to some future actions, and in a sense is a way, your point, of holding the government to account for the things either that we have done or that we promise to do in the future.
But I want to press you, will that be a statement by the Secretary of State in the House of Commons, or will it be a written ministerial answer? Will the families be told ahead of the statement when it's coming so they're not just taken by surprise?
Yeah. There will be communication beforehand about when it's coming. It will be a report, a bit like the Gosport report, probably not as long as that report, and it will be accompanied either by an oral or a written statement to be determined.
Thank you. The question at the back, please, then I'll come to the front. So if we can have the second microphone at the front for Gillian, but take the question from the back.
Microphone here.
So I'm going to take Bridget first, then Gillian. Then we'll come over to you, sir, third. So Bridget, Gillian, and then over.
Thank you. Unsurprisingly, I've got about 23 questions, so I will submit those in writing, and hopefully you can come back to me on there. Just listening to what you've had to say about the CPS and working with the CPS and the 4 possible outcomes. I mean, understandably, I'm sure you can appreciate that 3 of those outcomes will not be acceptable to the families, and after 20 years and having already served a life sentence here, we are not going to just accept that there's no case to answer. So I'll put that directly to you now. listening to what Chief Constable Pinckney had to say as well, is that Hampshire Constabulary were actually surprised that it didn't go forward to conviction, and that was in your earlier statement to the families. So given that, and given what we know about the Hampshire investigation, and that the expert opinions that were submitted were not, of the relevant level to go to court, etc., why would you even consider that being a much more rounded investigation, and with all the learnings that you've got in front of you from the 4 years that the panel's been working, that we wouldn't be able to see criminal proceedings at the end of your investigation?
Okay, Olivia and then Nick. Yep.
Let's start. So you're absolutely right, Bridget. So my remarks commented upon the fact that the very significant major investigation that the Hampshire Constabulary did, the third one, colleagues presented what they felt was a case for a number of criminal charges to the Crown Prosecution Service, but we do absolutely acknowledge that it is their decision. They are independent of us by judgment for good and sound reason. So, and that was a question of charges, which again, there is another leap to whether there is a conviction. They're different tests, and I'm sure you realise that. So that was the position of the investigation at the time, but that is an element that Nick Dowling will take into consideration.
The issue in our case, and in fact a number of the families' cases, is that the expert opinions that were submitted to the CPS, many of the certain areas that would have actually proved intent were ignored by the CPS. And in fact you can read that in the panel's report. So I understand, and I'm interested to know actually who the new QC is that will be working with you at the CPS, because we had David Perry QC previously. I'm sure you understand some of the issues that we had there.
Okay, so at the moment there is no QC. We're dealing with CPS, serious case team. Because we're just starting off the assessment, there's nothing to put to a QC. So we have to go through.
I thought you mentioned about having spoken to the legal team.
So the CPS. So we've met with a lawyer in the CPS, I didn't mention.
No, but do we know which lawyer it is?
So I do know which lawyer it is, because I've met them. And now if you ask me their name, I've now got it was lost in my head. If I can just finish, I didn't mention Queen's Counsel. We've engaged with the CPS because they previously looked at the file. So when they've assessed and made that independent decision and some time ago, we need to look at what is fundamentally different and new, and that's why we approach the CPS to see what that threshold is. And that's the piece of the assessment we'll do. So whilst we're going through everything, what is new material that's being gained by the panel, or what wasn't considered before that we think is relevant that they should. Again, I know 3 outcomes aren't what you want. I do realise that. But I'm not going to sit here, stand up and promise that it won't be one of the other outcomes.
Sure, I understand that.
And I can't say anything other than that.
No, just bearing in mind on the new evidence piece that we only had 100 cases, now we've got 656, so that's quite a bit new evidence for you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And Bridget said that she had more questions that she'll be submitting in writing. And again, I want to underline that opportunity is for everybody here, that if there are further questions that you want to put that have not been aired today, some people don't feel comfortable putting questions in such a public gathering, then please do let us have your questions in writing. Gillian.
I have more than one question. Is that going to be allowed?
I think just one question at a time, please, Gillian, so that we can get as many different people involved.
Right. I'd like to address Mr. Barneel. No doubt you have already heard or had a message sent through to you regarding the letter that arrived last week on counselling. I was rather surprised when I rang through that the gentleman said he knew a bit about counselling, and yet his telephone number was given out for people to approach.
I was amazed that the offer had been made of 6 one-hour telephone counselling sessions when, as far as I am concerned, it is 20 years since my mother died and I have been fighting this case. I have undergone, way back in the late 80s and early 90s, a cruise bereavement course, and also I was halfway through a 3-year further diploma course on psychotherapy. One of the things that was impressed upon me as a student, a very ancient student even then, was that when counselling, you take into account the body language, the facial expressions, etc., and you do not lead the client, I would say, though some people refer to them as patients. You do not lead, you allow the person you are dealing with to express their views, and you do not express your views to them. So to be offered bereavement counselling, which was the other thing that was impressed upon us as students, was that after 5 years of bereavement, if you still need counselling, you do not need counselling, you need psychological, professional psychological or psychiatric treatment. So I hope you don't think that some people who may be still affected by the bereavement, and they should have got over that after 5 years of bereavement, are going to benefit from the so-called counselling that appears to be offered to people now.
Thank you, Gillian. William, a difficult thing to comment on, but perhaps you can respond to.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 things to say. Obviously, the service or the contact that you received wasn't appropriate, so I apologise for that, first of all. Second thing to say is that counselling should be available face-to-face or by telephone, according to
It
need.
should be available quite soon after counselling, and I will say this, when the bishops first started off this inquiry, pamphlets were handed out as to where people could get counselling, and I myself had been in contact with the cruise section down in Portsmouth and Gosport, but I don't know whether anybody made themselves available.
Third thing to say, third part of my answer, the service is available as clinically appropriate, and there is no assumption in making a counselling service available that that is appropriate for all people.
And may I say a few words to the Chief Constable?
Gillian, very briefly, because we're running out of time now. There are still a few people who want to speak.
Say, I do hope, because this is not the first time I have dealt with a police force or credible behaviour by members of the police. I do hope that by the end of this, whichever way it goes, you will not be as disillusioned as I am now at 85 with the way that some police officers behave. And a very quick one.
No, Gillian, I'm sorry. We've got other people that need to come in. The gentleman over there at the wall, and then to this table, and then Charles wanted another question. So, yes, please, if you can make them as brief as possible.
My name is Mike Blur, and I'm here on behalf of the family. My father passed away in the Memorial Hospital in 1994, and just recently I've been told that his records, there's no record of his treatment. My question is to the police investigation on this, because I know that the panel, because of it, because there were 200 that were not able to be located, then they did not even consider this. The 200 medical records that have been lost, can you tell me from an investigative point of view what you intend to do about that? Will you be investigating why they were lost, when they were lost? The reason that I bring the question is because My father was in one of the wards that was classed as in the report as the end of the road, and that was in 1994. So if you could give me some idea as to what your intentions are with regards to this, then it would at least relieve our pressure as a family.
Thank you. The lost records, Nick, please.
So this will form part of the assessment. So we'll be looking at all relevant material and understanding what's happened to missing records. I can't answer that now because I don't know. So we'll look at the material, we'll look at the history as part of that assessment. And if there's stuff that we need to do then beyond that, then that's what we're be assessing.
So they are within the scope. They are within the scope of your assessment.
If it's in
so that material or non-material, as it may be, is absolutely going to be in the scope because we need to look at what happened between those dates. And if there's missing material.
Only I would want to ask, how many of these records was lost before 94 and after 94, if it was me doing the investigation? Having spent 28 years as a magistrate in the county of Hampshire, then those are the sort of questions I will be asking on any investigation.
Well, currently we're undertaking an assessment, we're not doing an investigation, so we need to understand what material is available, what's in the material that's available, what material may be missing and what happened to that material. These are fundamental questions. Because I can't assess material if I don't know what was there. So it's a good challenge, but at the moment I want to focus on the material we do have, and that will be aligned with the assessment as well.
I see. And who will be responsible?
Sorry, I really need to bring in some other people, but do continue the conversation with Nick over lunch. Please, the microphone.
Hello, Lucinda Grant, and our father was Stanley Carby. He was 65, in for rehabilitation. You were saying about that you'll be looking at all documents and paperwork you're getting. Like some of us, what was down on the documents wasn't necessarily what happened at the time, and also insufficient documents that was not wrote up, but we witnessed. So is that just going to be overseen? Is that going to be part of your assessment, and how does that work?
So has that been shared with the panel?
Yes.
So what we'll be doing, we'll be reviewing each one of those medical records with the narrative that the panel gathered. So we will be looking at that.
So that would be part of your assessment?
Yeah, because so the panel have reviewed each medical record, and there's their assessment in relation to each one, which I would suggest include your comments around what was in that medical record. We'll be assessing that.
Because I know in the police investigation we did write a statement, but that wasn't, we asked for that, it wasn't submitted, and they didn't put forward that statement. So, because what was wrote down on the day that he died wasn't necessarily what we was told and what was happened. So they wrote in his medical file what they wanted to write, but that wasn't necessarily what happened.
Thank you. Could we have the microphone over here, please, to the man in the red jumper? But a brief supplementary question from Charles, please. But keep them brief. Microphone.
Thank you. Just to mention to the panel, the Bishop's well already that certainly for myself and other people I know in the room, our confidence and trust in the system, it couldn't be much lower, quite frankly. My own trust is with the Bishop and the panel, with Norman Lamb and with Stephen Lloyd. The rest have a long way to go to catch up. I just want to say too that you mentioned the CPS is independent. Is it really? Or is someone controlling them, like the GMC, like the regulators, the corridors even? They all need looking at, quite frankly. I've got no trust at all in any of them, and I've good reason for saying that. If you'd like to discuss it later, I'd very happy to do so.
Okay, Charles, thank you. I'll let that stand as a comment rather than a question. Let's take nearly the last question, I'm afraid, over here.
Anthony Hunter with Wendy Hunter. Wendy's father, Alfred Lee, was the patient. My question is about the regulators, the GMC, the other bodies. and how they will now deal with the fact that there are questions about people's fitness to practice for a number of reasons, and what will happen. Do we have to wait for the end of the police investigation before actually the people at the GMC look at the evidence, because there are people practicing now who, seems to me, shouldn't be practicing without these bodies looking at the issues of what they did at the time.
I'm going to ask William if he'll take this as the last question and offer a comment on that.
Well, they can't do anything really until the upshot of what the police have looked at is completed. As the Bishop said, what they're doing at the present time is they are, in the light of the findings of the panel, looking at their processes going forward in terms of how they deal with these kinds of issues.
So can I just add
quickly
to that? So we've met with the GMC and we've met with the NMC, and what we've agreed is they will continue. We're not going to hamper what they're doing. They're going to continue. If they then identify evidence, then we will link into them straight away. So we're in regular communication with them. So we are learning from what the panel has found. We don't want to hamper anyone else doing any activity.
There are clearly many, many more questions that need to be put and answers to be found. We've come up to 1 o'clock now. We want to keep faith with the promise that we would draw to a close at 1. But as Bridget has made clear, she's going to submit more questions, and I encourage you that if you haven't had your question dealt with today, that you put it forward. January the 16th, I hope, is already written down on your bit of paper in front of you, because that will be the first of the family forums that are going to happen under the aegis of Operation Magenta. This is the Eastern region assessing the evidence. We're not quite sure where that meeting will be yet, but it will be local, because I'm conscious that some people have travelled far enough for today, and we want to make that meeting accessible as possible. So that's the family forum under the aegis of Operation Magenta. As William has already indicated, the Department of Health and Social Care has a duty of care towards you, and I have agreed at William's invitation to assist in the next year their relationship with yourselves, and more information about that will come to you in due course. What it's important to register is this, that if we want, as I know we all do, a just outcome to our concerns, then the process itself has to be just. That, I'm afraid, requires even more patience that you have already given in abundance. But the purpose of the family forums and of the family liaison meetings with the Department of Health is to hold the people in front of you to account. And what I want to say about today is this: having myself been associated with you for some 4 years, is that the serious tone of the questions and answers and the serious number of people that have gathered today, this is an extraordinary number of people to come out today, is in itself an honour of those you love. And the reason I, as chair, am glad that so many of you have travelled so far to be here is that I know that your presence makes an impact on those who have the responsibility to assess and eventually, I hope, to investigate further. So thank you so much for coming today and for being part of this. And I know that over the 4 years when I came to meet with just a relatively small number of people, the way these numbers have grown right up to the publication of the report and since demonstrates that there was something wrong going on, and it needs to be attended to even all these years later. But I think the best way that we can end today, and I wondered about doing this at the beginning, but I think more appropriately now, in the light of all the questions that we've heard, is simply to stand together in silence and remember those we love, whose memory we honour today by our presence. So would you please stand?